We know that Jimmy Butler will likely be traded soon after being suspended by the Heat for 7 games. When he formally requested a trade, he initially stated that he would go anywhere and that his goal was to return to Miami, ideally somewhere where he could win a championship, but it's becoming clear that's not the case at all. The original list was reportedly a combination of the Warriors, Mavs, Suns, Milwaukee, Memphis, Sacramento, and Houston, but it has now essentially become a one-team list, which has caused Butler to lose all of his. Make use of leverage. Strangely, the Warriors haven't actually been mentioned in these reports at all, despite the fact that they are obviously having difficulties. Their front office keeps saying that they need to add more players because they don't want to just give up on the season with Steph at this point in his career. I would have thought that there would be a trade package there, and they could arrange for Butler to be traded in order to shake up the roster. However, for many of the reasons we've discussed in previous videos, Golden State does not currently appear to be a true Jimmy Butler destination. To make the money work, Andrew Wiggins would very certainly need to be involved in the sale. However, this is just not a feasible choice for them, and they haven't actually been mentioned in these reports either. The Mavericks are another team that never really made sense in the first place. They are currently missing a number of players, such as Luka and Kai, so now is not the best time to make a trade, and they don't appear interested in trading either PJ Washington or Klay Thompson, both of whom would need to be involved in the deal for the money to work out compared to the other teams. Butler's agency has essentially shut down the rumored teams. Over the past few days, Milwaukee seemed to be gathering steam in an attempt to get under the second apron by trading away players like Chris Middleton and Pat Connaughton before going out and acquiring Butler. Once they're under the second apron, which has essentially been shut down, he's essentially told them he doesn't want to go to Mill. Another team that you have discussed extensively in the comments is Memphis. They appear to have acquired a lot of traction based on what I've seen on Twitter. I still believe they have some chance, but it appears that, similar to Milwaukee, Butler has approached them and told them, "This is not a team I want to go to," and he has every right to do so because he has a player option this offseason, which is one of the reasons the situation has been accelerated in the first place. Jimmy Butler is free to leave, so if you're not willing to offer him an extension worth the amount he wants, or if he's not willing to leave your team altogether, he can theoretically choose where he goes if he is traded eventually, and Memphis, as I mentioned, doesn't appear to be on that list. Sacramento, all that stuff has cooled down a little bit as well now that they've got a new head coach in Doug Christie and they've been playing better, and the Rockets seem to be totally fine with their team. They don't feel like this is their moment to make an all-in move, and or they don't think Butler is the guy to make that move with, which of course leaves us with the team that has been speculated from start to finish, and it's been speculated on and reported on so much to the point that this has to have been Jimmy Butler's endgame destination the entire time. Now it all makes sense why Shames was so adamant that Phoenix would be involved, why his agent was so adamant that it wasn't just Phoenix, cause he didn't want to lose the leverage. Everything about the situation is pointed to the Suns, even when it hasn't made any sense at all, and I think it's clear that that is Jimmy Butler's not just preferred destination at this point. It seems like it is his only destination, but that is not a good situation to be in if you are Jimmy Butler, which is likely why his agent was trying to make it seem like that was his only destination when Shames was making it seem like it was. Here's the situation in Phoenix: Bradley Beal has to be in the trade. He has to be traded to Miami or another team. There is no other way that Phoenix can put together salaries and add Jimmy Butler to their team. It is just not financially possible. The problem with that is that Bradley Beal cannot be traded from Phoenix unless he wants to. He holds a no-trade clause. Him and LeBron are the only two guys in the entire league that have a no-trade clause. Now, we've talked about this before, but his agent, Bradley Beal's agent, has come out and said he is not waiving his no-trade clause. That is not part of the plan right now. Bradley Beal wants to stay in Phoenix, wants to help turn things around despite a team that is clearly falling apart and just nothing is going right in. Fix him and Yusuf Nurkic have since been moved to the bench. Coming off the bench, Bradley Beal's not happy with it. It seems like that was a tactic by Phoenix to try and get him to waive his no-trade clause anyway, which makes me think that maybe there was a structure where Beal could go to another team and then Miami would send Jimmy Butler to Phoenix, and then some assets would be exchanged if they're actively trying to basically sabotage their team so that Bradley Beal would waive his no-trade clause. It seems like the Butler thing was actually a real possibility, but as I said, Beal's agent has come out and said plainly and publicly he is not waiving his no-trade clause, and if he doesn't want to leave Phoenix he doesn't have to. And I think the reason why he's so adamant about not waiving his no-trade clause isn't necessarily that he wants to stay in Phoenix. Obviously that situation is falling apart. He's not going to end up in Miami before the whole Jimmy Butler situation, when it seemed like Jimmy Butler was going to be there long-term and was still in Washington before Phoenix traded for him. I believe that Bradley Beal would find it intriguing to end up with the Miami Heat and be, a higher level scoring option there than he is currently in Phoenix. If he could waive his no-trade clause and go to Miami, that seemed like a realistic option for Beal. This would be much simpler, in my opinion. The issue is that Beal has one of the worst contracts in sports, with 4 years and a ton of money left on it. Miami doesn't want that money, so he waives us a no-trade clause, they switch teams, and some assets go to Miami. The fact that Beal is on this huge long-term contract, and the no-trade clause transfers to Miami, means that if it doesn't work out, that's what's holding this whole thing up. In any case, Detroit has been mentioned a lot, and now that they don't have Jaden Ivey as this is a team that would make sense trying to push for the playoff situation. Let Adby and Kate Cunningham. Although I detest that notion for Detroit, it has been floated since they have some contracts they can work out. After which Butler can move to Phoenix and you can donate some assets to a few of these other clubs. Absolutely, there is some structure there, but once more, Bradley would have to consider the circumstances and decide that, given Jimmy Butler's efforts to play with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant in Phoenix, he would prefer to leave the Pistons. Go to Detroit and play there. I think that's very clearly not a situation Bradley Beal wants to be in. He'd prefer to be somewhere like Miami or stay in Phoenix, and until he waives his no-trade clause, which his agent has publicly said he's not going to do, this is a non-starter. This will not happen in Phoenix. And having said all those things, if you go down the list, and his saying no to Memphis, his saying no to Milwaukee, the Warriors aren't interested, the Rockets aren't interested, all these other teams are just like, now we're good, and it comes down to just Phoenix, and Bradley Beal has the ultimate no, I'm not being traded card in the no-trade clause. This deal can't happen, you're out of teams. If you're Jimmy Butler, you have lost all leverage, you've lost all negotiating power, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Obviously, this is a complicated deal. He makes so much money, it's hard to find a team. Here's, I think, the real situation, though I don't think teams are all that interested in paying Jimmy Butler what he wants to be paid, and that is probably one of the biggest frustrations for him right now, is that Miami didn't want to give him the extension in the offseason, and now he's had to force himself in a situation where his is making himself a problem in Miami to try and get out now. Now these other teams are seeing that, they're saying, okay, why would we want to invite a 35-36-year-old problem into our locker room, and then also have to pay him $50+ million over the next couple of seasons? Jimmy can just opt into his player option next year, make 55+, and be in the exact same situation that he's in with Miami right now. And so if that doesn't happen, if no one wants to pay him, maybe he'll just do that. But if no teams out there are overly interested in trading for Butler, whether it be because they don't want to give up a ton of assets in general, or because they don't want to give up a ton of assets in exchange for a guy that might walk, or because they don't want to give up a ton of assets for a guy they'd have to pay a bunch of money to, if there's not real legitimate interest in extending Jimmy Butler, it's going to be extremely difficult to find other teams, because then Phoenix doesn't feel like they have to up their offer at all. They can't trade for him in the first place if Bell does, and waivers no trade clause, and you end up in a situation where nobody wants Jimmy Butler. Now, all of this is reported, doesn't mean it's 100% true, but if this is where things stand, and I think that's where things stand, Jimmy Butler's not going to get traded. The 7-game suspension is going to be over. He's still going to be a member of the Heat, and is either going to just be sent home and not really play. Maybe they can figure something out closer to the trade deadline here in about a month, or he's just not really going to be a part of the team. They're going to get to the offseason, he's either going to opt in or opt out. If he opts out, maybe he has a team out there that is willing to pay him a bunch of money in free agency, seems unlikely, or he opts in and we do this all over again in the offseason, when maybe things change for B in Phoenix, when maybe some of these other teams see a better option once they have Jimmy Butler for an entire year rather than trading for him mid-season. Something has to change if Jimmy Butler is actually going to get traded, because right now it is a one-team list, and that one team can't do anything unless Bradley Beal waives there's no trade clause.